Chris Godinez, licensed professional counselor, the host of We Need to Talk with Chris Godinez. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. If you feel you need a therapist, please go to Google, type in therapy, your city, Psychology Today will pop up, and it will have therapists in your area. Also, the views and opinions stated herein are mine and mine alone. They do not represent the ACA, the APA, or any other therapist for that matter. Boom. Okay, a little housekeeping. Somebody wrote in and was like, oh my God, why are you recommending Psychology Today? Well, because I need to send people somewhere. So Psychology Today is the easiest way to reach a therapist. Now, do all therapists understand psychology? Apparently not. Do all therapists understand personality disorders? No, they don't, which is why you have got to interview the therapist as deeply as they interview you. You need to have a whole list of questions. You can't just go in and assume that therapists know what they're doing, because a lot of them don't, sadly, because like I said before, the APA and the ACA have made personality disorders a political issue. And the humanists in the, and the humanists in the group of those two professional associations have made it a political issue, and they're like, we don't want to hurt people, we don't want to label them, blah, blah, blah. Abuse is abuse, I'm sorry. And not every therapist is well-versed in personality disorders. So you must interview them, and you must have a list of questions ready for them. Like, do you understand narcissistic abuse syndrome? Do you understand being the target of abuse? Do you understand domestic violence? Do you understand, it's like, what is your experience with this? Have you worked with the population that has been harmed by a person with a malignant personality disorder? You've got to ask those questions. And in fact, that is going to be one of the topics that's coming up in the next few weeks. So, okay, today's topic is CPTSD, PTSD, NPD, ASPD, BPD, bipolar, and more. Yay! So here's the thing. There is a lot of misdiagnosis out there for the very reasons that I just mentioned, is that the colleges are not teaching the up-and-coming therapists what's what. They're not going through the personality disorders. They're not really going into domestic violence. They're not really going into post-traumatic stress disorder. They're not really teaching complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So it's really, really important that if you get a diagnosis, that you really check it out yourself to really see whether this is something that is applying to you or whether it doesn't, because like I said, not every therapist was trained the same way. The good ones continue their education and educate the living crap out of themselves when they recognize that they don't know what they don't know, if that makes any sort of sense. So, okay, so let's start with PTSD, and then we're going to slide into CPTSD. So, all right. So post-traumatic stress disorder, post meaning after the fact, trauma, it was a horrible event, stress, anxiety, disorder, you're not coping with it well, okay? That is, Kaylee, I will get to that in a second. That is the definition of post-traumatic stress disorders. After the fact, it's after the event. The event has got to be something that is threatening, life-threatening, traumatic, frightening, you thought your life was in danger, etc. And so that encompasses things like a car accident, going to war, witnessing a murder, being involved in an armed robbery, being the victim of an armed robbery, that kind of thing. So that is the typical traditional post-traumatic stress disorder. What we are finding is that in domestic violence, it's emotional abuse, and the emotional abuse is ongoing. So that's complex post-traumatic stress disorder. In other words, it's continuing on for days, weeks, months, years, sometimes decades. And so the complex part is that it's not just a one-time or a two-time event. This is something that is ongoing and relentless, and this person doesn't catch a break. And so complex post-traumatic stress disorder, what happens is the person is constantly in a state of agitation, constantly in a state of high vigilance. So in regular PTSD, yes, you're going to have hypervigilance. You're going to be on the lookout. You're going to, that's why if you've been in war or you have any sort of PTSD due to, that or loud, an accident, a car accident, loud noises, you'll hit the deck. Absolutely. Or if you've been involved in a shooting, you'll hit the deck, you'll, backfire happens and you're on the ground. So yeah, you get triggered a lot. And the same thing happens with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Anything can trigger you. Somebody yelling can trigger you. Like, for example, last night, somebody in our neighborhood was having a screaming fight. And I'll tell you what, I woke up like, holy crap, do I need to call the police? Because it sounded pretty bad, but then they calmed down. So, but my heart was like, oh my God, 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 So yeah, so things like that will trigger you. So, so the difference between complex post-traumatic stress disorder and PTSD, the regular one, is that with the regular old PTSD is usually an event. It's usually a thing that has happened: war, murder, suicide, being involved in an armed robbery, seeing somebody killed in front of you, watching an accident, seeing somebody run a red light, which they do often here in Gilbert. So yeah, things like that. That's post-traumatic stress disorder. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder is the emotional. It's the emotional abuse. It's the constant putting down. It's the constant wearing down. It's the keeping you up at night, not allowing you to sleep, telling you you're a horrible person, making sure that you don't have contact with your family or your friends, making you isolated, doing things like that. That is the complex part of it. And that is why I'm really, truly hoping that the APA and the ACA start including complex post-traumatic stress disorder in the next version of the DSM. And I want them to put in narcissistic abuse syndrome also in there, so that people get educated on this is how we react when we have been subject to complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Yes, if you've been in an abusive relationship, you probably have it. Okay, Kaylee, you just asked a question. What is the difference between a narcissistic personality disorder and someone who just has CPTSD? Is the intention of is it the intention of the person? The more I learn, the more confused I am. Yes. Okay. So all of these, here's the good news, bad news. All of these have got different criteria that you have to meet. However, they can mimic each other. So in other words, somebody with complex post-traumatic stress disorder may be very angry. They may have a lot of anger and not know how to deal with it, which is also a hallmark of, obviously, the abusers. So those two things can get confused. And if you do not have a good therapist, they're not going to be able to tell the difference between somebody with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, somebody with narcissistic personality disorder, or somebody with borderline personality disorder. And here's where it gets really confusing. This is where you need like a map to figure out everything. So BPD, borderline personality disorder, is based in trauma. It is part nature and it is part nurture. So this is where it gets really confusing. So you can have a family where the kids are all raised by the same parents. One sibling will have BPD, the other one will not. Why? Nature, nurture, genes. What is their disposition? How likely are they to be able to handle stress and trauma and things like that? So this is where things get confusing. And as you slide down the more malignant end of the spectrum, so, over here is traits of, narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder. As you slide down the spectrum and become malignant, those start overlapping, as if it wasn't confusing enough. So that's why I'm saying it's really, really important that if somebody gives you a diagnosis, you don't just sit there and go, oh, okay, I'm going to take that. No, investigate it, check it out. Therapists can and are wrong, myself included. Nobody is perfect. And this is what I always tell people. It's like, look, guys, you know yourselves better than anybody, myself included, any therapist included. You know yourselves better. You do. So if you're questioning the diagnosis you've been given, go investigate it. Does it fit or does it not? And if it doesn't, you have the right to fire your therapist. You do. It amazes me that people are just like, oh, I can't fire them. I might hurt their feelings. Well, you might, and that's not why the therapist is there. And if the therapist is there worried about their own feelings, then that's a bad therapist. So you always, always, always trust your gut. You know who you are better than anybody else. You do. This is part of person-centered therapy. And it's also part of solution-focused therapy. It's like, you know what you need. You know who and what you are better than anybody. Sometimes it does help, honest to God, to get a diagnosis, because I've had people that have had personality disorders, like the borderline down at the quiet end of it, the traits of, and they get the diagnosis and they're like, suddenly it's like the light bulb goes on and they're like, oh, wow, I get it. Oh my God, now I know what to do with it. Fan-freaking-tastic. You run with that. You run with that. You get as much information as you can. You read everything you can. You get into dialectic behavioral therapy and you work on your self-esteem and you go. You just go. That's awesome. See, this is why I think that the humanists have really got it fucked up, because it's like sometimes having a name for something is empowering, so that you know what to do with it. You know where to go. You know what direction to head in, as opposed to this, oh, we don't want to hurt your feelings, so we're just not really going to tell you what you have. Bullshit, motherfucker, bullshit. So you want to tell them that. Anyway, I mean, you want to know what you've got, at least in my opinion. That's okay. It's like with a medical thing. If you had cancer, would you rather that they just go, well, we don't want to hurt your feelings and we don't want to make you feel bad, so we're just not going to tell you that you have cancer? What? What the actual fuck? You know what I'm saying? Bullshit. You want to know what you got. Okay, thank you. I'm diagnosed CPTSD, but I feel as if I'm bad. What can I do to change? Okay, don't feel bad, baby. You're not bad. You're not bad. So CPTSD is really hard to have because you get triggered by all sorts of things, and your emotions are raw, and your anger is probably pretty to the forefront. And a great book to help with that, there's a complex post-traumatic stress disorder workbook. I'm not sure who it's by. I need to look it up. But the other thing is that you want to read CPTSD From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. But let me give you this caveat. It is going to trigger the living crap out of you. So be prepared. Take it in small chunks. Just take it in tiny, tiny chunks. You read as much as you can, walk away, go do something else, go exercise, do whatever you need to. Come back to it, keep reading. There is going to be a point in reading that book, usually around chapter 3, where you're like, I don't want to read anymore because this is describing everything. Holy shit. Yeah, so take a break. Make sure you've got somebody you can bounce off of, that you can, talk to, whether it's a therapist, a support group. Oh my God, support groups, guys. Support groups are awesome. Catholic Charities offers support groups. Jewish Family Services offers domestic violence support groups. Go, get with people that have been there, done that. Because part of what the problem is that we feel like we're the only ones that have ever been through this stuff. We're not alone. Trust me, there are hundreds of thousands of us out there. Okay. I used to sit with the DSM-4 and try to diagnose, and with the shared traits and the comorbid thing, it's incredibly difficult to do that without training to get an exact diagnosis, but then I have no training. That said, it did help me move in the correct direction. Well, good. Yay, Francis, yay. I'm glad. That's awesome. How can you stop flashbacks? Okay, that is a common question that I get. Flashbacks are gonna happen. There's really no way to completely stop them, but what you can do is self-soothe when they happen. So here's what's happening. In any sort of PTSD, whether it's complex or whether it's, plain old regular everyday PTSD, like that's, you know what I'm saying. Jesus Christ. I don't mean to minimalize it. It's like with PTSD and with CPTSD, it's going to happen. Flashbacks are going to happen. Here's why. Here's your brain. Okay. Left side, right side. So wait. Left side, right. You know what I mean? Anyways, the brain, two sides of the brain. So this is the amygdala, okay? So the amygdala sits, it's an almond-shaped organ, and it sits about an inch inside of each ear. This is our part of our fight, flight, or freeze center. And please remember, I am simplifying the hell out of it. So if there's any neuro people out there that are like, oh my God, she got it wrong. You know what? Blow me. Find a better description. Anyway, so, this is the amygdala. The amygdala, for all intents and purposes, God love it, is stupid. Really, truly stupid. 3 O's, stupid. It cannot tell the difference between a real threat, like, hiking out in the woods and a bear's charging you because it has cubs, a thought about bears charging you while you're hiking out in the woods, an emotional threat, your spouse is leaving you for people next door, a thought about being left for somebody next door, a future thought, a past thought, it's all the same. So anytime the amygdala feels threatened in any way, shape, or form, anytime a thought hits it, it lights up like a Christmas tree and goes, help me, help me, help me. And it tells the hippocampus and the hypothalamus to start telling the brain to release cortisol. Cortisol is our stress hormone. Here's the other bad thing that happens. The amygdala gets overactive. It like enlarges, okay? And it starts overshadowing the hippocampus, the hypothalamus. These two guys are responsible for short-term to long-term memory. This is why we as abuse survivors have got memory issues in part. Part of it is that, part of it is abuse amnesia, and that's going to be a whole other show that I want to talk about. So, okay. So we have short-term to long-term memory issues. We have cortisol flooding our system. So our system starts to tense because we're getting ready to run away, kill something, or freeze like a bunny rabbit. I think it's called freeze, flight, fawn. Wait, I'm missing one. Fight, freeze, fawn, flee. So yeah, so that's what we're doing, is like we're trying to stay safe. It's a very primitive part of the brain. So, okay, so we're tensing up. Now we're cutting off all the oxygen to our lungs, right? And we're taking these little breaths that is just flooding the system with all sorts of not good stuff. And then it's like we have these flashbacks because we're getting triggered. So our brain is going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. This is just exactly like when this happened. And our body is responding as if it were happening right here, right now. That's why the flashbacks are so frightening, is because our brain produces that flashback. Our amygdala responds as if it were happening right here, right now, and we go into complete panic or rage, one of the two. So, okay, we're tensed up. We've got all this little teeny tiny breaths going on, too much oxygen, too much CO2. I don't know what it is, but we got too much of something and we're not getting enough in our body. So we're taking these little tiny breaths. We've got this racing thoughts. We've got the flashback going. And then what our body does is it does one of two things. We either split off into a traditional panic attack, which is the stereotypical, oh my God, I'm going to die, keel over, boom. Or we go turn into the Incredible Hulk or the Incredible She-Hulk. They're both the same. So that's why people with PTSD and CPTSD have got rage attacks. And that's why it gets misdiagnosed as another personality disorder. And that's why it gets oftentimes misdiagnosed as borderline personality disorder, because of the rage. So anyway, where was I going with this? Hang on. Flashbacks. Okay. So you really can't stop the flashbacks. The only thing you can do is recognize that you're having one, and you must do self-soothing talk. In other words, as soon as you realize you're tensed up and you're taking these little tiny breaths and you're in the middle of a flashback, you've got to stop dissociating. So it's called disassociating. So what it is that when our brains are overloaded, we are no longer in the here and now. We're either in the past or we're in the future, or we're somewhere, or we're floating 5 feet out of our body, but we're not in the here and now. So that's really important to start self-soothing. Rub yourself, remind yourself that you're present and you're safe and everything's okay. Self-soothing talk, self-soothing talk, self-soothing talk, and that's really the only way to deal with them. You cannot stop them altogether, and they will get less and less as you learn to cope with them, and as you learn to breathe, and as you learn to self-soothe, they will become less and less. They won't be as intense or as frightening, because now your brain is going, oh wait, okay, we're breathing. Okay, oh, I'm being told everything's okay. Oh, okay, all right, okay, adrenal gland, shut down the adrenaline process, stop it, stop flooding the system with adrenaline, and we start soothing ourselves. So you can't get rid of them completely, but you can self-soothe yourself, and you can talk yourself down off the ledge. So, but it's going to take touching yourself, bringing yourself back to the present moment, being kind and gentle with you. And you want your partner, whoever your partner is, or your friend, or whoever you're with, to know, hey, I suffer from CPTSD or PTSD, and I may go into one of these kind of like, disassociated kind of phases. So, just letting you know. So normalize it. It happens. Okay. Yeah, this is why I couldn't remember any of my coursework for my degree. Yeah. When we are in the middle of abuse, you're not going to remember a whole lot, because the amygdala is on overdrive. You're trying to stay safe. It's trying to keep you protected, and it is working nonstop because the threats are coming in nonstop. When you are with an abuser, when you are living with an abuser, the abuse doesn't stop. It's 24/7. I mean, because they're either with you abusing you, or they're on their phone abusing you. So it doesn't stop. And yeah, the amygdala is constantly being stimulated, and it's constantly going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So yeah, that's why we have problems with our memory. That's why we have abuse amnesia. Now I want to talk more about that in another show. Okay. Okay. All right. Hi, Arthur. Would accidental encounters with ex-abusers be considered as flashbacks? That would be a trigger. Holy crap. I would probably, shit Twinkies in the wrapper if that happened. So, yeah, no, that would be a trigger. That would be a massive, massive, massive trigger, which would cause flashbacks. Absolutely. Due to how powerful and out of nowhere all the emotions come flooding into our system. That's a trigger, even if we've already forgiven them. So, our bodies are not stupid. We know when we've been hurt. It's kind of like, if you ever put your hand accidentally on a hot stove, you remember and you're like, oh crap, I don't want to do that again. So when we see our abuser, yeah, we're going to get triggered. We're going to absolutely be like, oh my God, because it's going to cause all of those emotions to come flooding back. And it has nothing to do with forgiveness. It really doesn't. It's a primal thing. It's this person harmed us and our body is going, get the fuck away. What are you doing? Get out of here. This is dangerous. So yeah, that's what's going on. Good. I'm glad this is helpful. Thank you, Francis. There's specific years of middle and high school I still can't remember due to abuse from my mother. Yeah, that's going to happen. And the memories may or may not come back. And when they do, they may be very disturbing. So how do I explain this? There is a reason we don't remember stuff, and it's because we can't handle it. Honestly, it's like it's too much. It's like sensory freaking overload. And so it's a way of the body and the brain to try to protect us. Is it helpful? Well, on some levels, yes, but on some levels, really no. And I am a big fan of trying to figure out those missing years. It's going to be painful. It's going to suck ass. You're going to hate it. And you're going to need a good goddamn therapist to help you get through it. But I really do recommend trying to figure out what was going on, because this is part of the original wound. Remember how I talked about the original attachment issue? So when we have an abuser that's a parent, whether it's a mom or a dad or a grandparent or, whoever was our caregiver when we were growing up, and we've got that insecure attachment and we're missing periods of time and events and things like that, something happened. Something happened and we need to know what it was. We do, because that's part of our empowerment. This is part of who we are. This is part of why we are the way we are. And it's our right. It's our fucking right to know what happened. It is. And I think it's a great idea to start working with a therapist to try to, and I don't recommend hypnosis, because remember, you can implant false memories. But what you do want to do is you want to work with a therapist and start working on those things. What was going on? What do you remember? Can we go back and remember what was going on? And oftentimes the memories will start coming back when you feel safe. And that's the biggest thing. When you have PTSD, CPTSD, you want to feel safe, period. Okay. Let's see. Oh, thank you, Alfonso. Okay, so where was I? Oh, okay. So the misdiagnosis. So no, okay. I hope that covered PTSD, CPTSD. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and throw them up on the chat. So NPD, let's talk about that. So, well, first of all, hold on half a tick. Let me give you the criteria for CPTSD. Just so I've got you guys here, I might as well throw this out at you. Okay, hang on. I got to find it. Got my DSM-5. And remember, the DSM-5 is not the end-all and be-all of the world. Like I said, they don't have CPTSD in here. They don't have narcissistic abuse syndrome in here yet. So it's not the be-all and the end-all. It's just kind of like a general kind of guide for us as diagnosing. Where the hell did it go? Ah, there it is. Okay. 271. Okay. So there's criteria that has to be met. In any diagnosis, criteria has to be met. So here is the diagnosis for post-traumatic stress disorder. The following criteria apply to adults, adolescents, and children older than 6 years old. For children 6 years and younger, see corresponding criteria below. Yes, children can also get and have CPTSD, PTSD, because yes, they are unfortunately in abusive relationships as well. Okay, Exposure to actual or threatened death, serious injury, or sexual violence in one or more of the following ways: directly experiencing the traumatic events, witnessing in person, number 2, witnessing in person the events as it occurred to others. 3, learning that the traumatic events occurred to a close family member or close friend. In cases of actual or threatened death of a family member or friend, the events must have been violent or accidental. 4, experiencing repeated or extreme exposure to adverse details of the traumatic events. For example, first responders, police officers, firemen, that type of thing. Collecting human remains, repeatedly exposed to details of child abuse. And therapists often have this as a condition as well, because we hear the most horrible stories. In fact, one of the worst cases I ever had was a child that was being pretty much tortured. And the parent showed me pictures, and I had nightmares for months over that child, and CPS had to get involved and yada, yada, yada. So yeah, I mean, anytime you see something horrific happening to another human being, you're probably going to have PTSD. Okay, criterion 4A does not apply to the exposure through electronic media, television, movies, or pictures unless this exposure is work-related. Now, here's something interesting. When in the 1980s, the Vietnam movies came out, like the Deer Hunter, well, that was 70s, but Deer Hunter, Full Metal Jacket, The Killing Fields, etc. Counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists suddenly started seeing this whole younger generation with post-traumatic stress disorder, and it was because they had been watching these movies. I thought that was really interesting. And yeah, I think you can be traumatized by watching a very violent movie or a very, historically accurate and very vicious, time period where people are being harmed and tortured and killed. Yeah, I think you can get PTSD from watching stuff like that. You bet. Letter B, the presence of one or more of the following intrusion symptoms associated with the traumatic events beginning after the traumatic events occurred. Recurrent, involuntary, and intrusive distressive memories of the traumatic events. So it's like you can't stop thinking about it. You just keep replaying it over and over and over and over in your head. Recurrent distressing dreams in which the content and or effect of the dream are related to the traumatic events. You're dreaming about it constantly. Your brain is trying to make sense of this horrible thing that happened. And this goes with emotional abuse as well. Dissociative reactions, flashbacks, in which the individual feels or acts as if the traumatic events were reoccurring. Such reactions may occur on a continuum, with the most extreme expression being a complete loss of awareness of present surroundings. Yeah, some people just completely, they're not there. They are in their head and they are re-experiencing what happened as if it were happening right here, right now. Intense or prolonged psychological distress at exposure to internal or external cues that symbolize or resemble an aspect of the traumatic event. So running into your ex, definitely. Marked physiological reactions to internal or external cues that symbolize or resemble an aspect of the traumatic events. Throwing up. Yep. Whenever you're exposed to something that reminds you of the abuse, my first response, besides the racing heart, is I want to go puke. So yeah, absolutely. Persistent avoidance of stimuli associated with the traumatic events. So in other words, we start avoiding things. We start not wanting to be around anything that reminds us of it. And so we start making our world smaller and smaller and smaller, and you don't want to do that. That's why I'm saying, if you've got PTSD, if you've got complex post-traumatic stress disorder, super important, go get with a good therapist so that you don't start getting agoraphobia and making your world smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller in an effort to try to avoid the flashbacks, the triggers, the et cetera. Does that make sense? Okay. Avoidance of or efforts to avoid external reminders, people, places, conversations, activities, objects, or situations that arouse distressing memories, thoughts, or feelings. D, negative alterations in cognitions and moods associated with the traumatic events, beginning or worsening after the traumatic event occurred, as evidenced by two or more of the following: inability to remember an important aspect of the traumatic event, typically due to dissociative amnesia, and not to other factors such as head injury, alcohol, or drugs. Persistent and exaggerated negative belief or expectations about oneself or other or the world. I am bad. Ooh, one of you said that. No one can be trusted. The world is completely dangerous. My whole nervous system is completely ruined. No, you're not bad. Yes, people can be trusted. The world is not completely dangerous. It's a little dangerous, but it's not completely dangerous. So yeah, we want to work, you want to work on that. So if you're the one who said that, oh my God, I think I'm bad, go get with a therapist, please. We need to start working on that mistaken belief. It is not a real belief. It is a mistaken belief. Persistent distorted cognitions about the cause or consequences of the traumatic events that lead to the individual blaming themselves or others. Persistent negative emotional state, fear, horror, anger, guilt, shame. Markedly diminished interest in participation in significant activities, feelings of detachment or estrangements from others. In other words, feeling like people don't get it, nobody else has felt this, nobody understands, nobody's ever going to understand, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Inability to experience happiness, satisfaction, or loving feelings. You kind of go numb. You just kind of go numb. Marked alterations in arousal and reactivity associated with the traumatic events, beginning or worsening after the traumatic events, as evidenced by 2 or more of the following. Irritable behavior and angry outbursts with little or no provocation, which is oftentimes why it gets misdiagnosed as borderline personality disorder. Typically expressed as verbal or physical aggression towards people or objects, reckless or self-destructive behavior, hypervigilance, exaggerated startle response, problems with concentration, sleep disturbance, being unable to sleep. And of course, that also plays into our abuser would keep us up at night and try to destroy our sleep. And so it kind of carries on, and we forget that we need to take care of ourselves and we need to sleep, or we'll wake up in the middle of the night with a nightmare. And it's because of what happened in our abusive relationship. Duration of the disturbance is more than 1 month. The disturbance causes clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other areas of functioning. The disturbance is not attributed to the physiological effects of substance abuse or other medication. And you can have dissociative, depersonalization, derealization, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So dissociative and derealization, when I was leaving my family, because remember, my family was pretty damned abusive, my dad especially, I would have episodes where nothing felt real. Nothing felt real. Like, it was kind of like, is this reality? Is this not reality? Nothing felt real. And it's a very scary place to be. So that's why I'm saying, if you recognize yourself in any of these symptoms, please, please, please get with a good therapist, well-versed in PTSD, CPTSD. Start working on this, because you don't need to live your life like this. You don't need to feel fear for the rest of your life. And you certainly don't need to be triggered the rest of your life. So go get with a good therapist. Okay, let's see. Yeah, when you run into your abuser, your whole body says, get the hell away. Yeah, absolutely. And you want to try, honestly, if you run into your abuser, you don't want to scurry away so that they get that narcissistic supply, like, ha, 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 they don't want to be around me. But you can honestly just kind of look at them and turn around and go. So that's the best way to handle that. Flashbacks all seem to be the same event from age 4 onwards. It feels like a broken record and never stops, reliving the same thing. It's very frustrating and traumatic. I would definitely get with a good therapist and start working on that. Let's figure out if there's a way to stop that broken record so it just doesn't keep skipping back to that and keep replaying it and keep replaying it. So get with a good therapist that is well-versed in PTSD, CPTSD. Okay, can you explain how obsessive compulsive thoughts relate to CPTSD? So that goes with the, one of the criteria is that you can't stop thinking about it. You can't stop thinking about it. So OCD is a completely different animal. So obsessive compulsive disorder is when you have a set of behaviors that you do over and over and over and over again. You have a set of thoughts that you have over and over and over and over again. And that's generally where hoarders come in and things like that. Being obsessive about the thoughts, though, is slightly different. It's your brain is trying to make sense of what happened, and that's why it keeps replaying it. Just like Catherine was saying, it just keeps replaying it like a broken record over and over and over and over, which is why it's really, really, really important to get with a good therapist to start breaking that thought. It's called thought stopping. So when the thoughts start happening again, I coulda, I shoulda, I woulda, right? That's called shoulding all over yourself. So when the thoughts start happening about the event, you've got to literally tell your brain, thank you for your input, shut the fuck up. Why? Because I say so. Take your power back and then replace it. Okay, I couldn't, I didn't, and I shouldn't. It happened, it's done, it's over, and it's not my fucking fault. Period. So do you see where I'm going with that? It's like, you're going to have to be tough with this. You're not going to allow it to sit there and bully you, because that's what it's doing when it's forcing you to relive it over and over and over and over and over again. Get with a good therapist, get with somebody that can help you do the thought stopping. That's what it's called. Okay. I hope, Kaylee, I hope that answered your question. If it didn't, let me know. I heard that we replay it in an effort to correct it. Yes. Yeah. Our brains don't like it when things go south. It really doesn't. And yes, our brain is sitting there going, well, if I had done this, well, but what if I'd done this? And what if I'd done that? Again, the past is over. It's done. We can't fix it. We are not Doctor Who. I wish we were. That'd be so cool. But yeah, we can't fix it. We've got to just be able to go, okay, brain, this is what it is. Accept it. Move forward. That kind of thing. So in neurolinguistic programming, Lauren talks about, there's no stuck. There's either you're moving forward or you're moving backwards. So if you're feeling stuck, it's because you're moving backwards. You keep revisiting the past, trying to fix it. You can't. The past is done. The past is over. You only can accept and then move forward and do something different next time, if there is a next time. And hopefully, if it's traumatic, there won't be. Okay. Yes, EMDR. Okay. Somebody asked me about EMDR. Now, I don't know enough about it. I do not practice EMDR. I am strictly, well, not strictly, but I do cognitive behavioral therapy, and I also mix that in with solution-focused and reality therapy and Adlerian, and basically anything that the client needs. But the point being is EMDR, you want to get with somebody who is really knows their stuff with EMDR, not just somebody who took a weekend course. So again, if you've got PTSD, CPTSD, you want to get with a practitioner that has been thoroughly trained in EMDR. And yes, it can help, because what it does is it helps the brain recall the event without reliving it. So it kind of short circuits the amygdala part, and you're able to kind of work through the trauma without having to be, in a constant state of hyperarousal. So yeah, EMDR can definitely help. CBD can definitely help. DBT can definitely help. You just got to get with a good practitioner that can help you work through this and make it safe enough to recall the events without having to relive them. And it's a fine line. It really is. Okay. What is EMDR? Okay. Shoot. Eye movement rapid desensitization, eye movement, desensitization. Anyway, what it is you go back and forth. It's like hypnosis, but not. And you're watching like a pencil or a pen or something, and the therapist is running it back and forth in front of your eyes as you talk about the traumatic event. And for some reason, and I do not understand it because I've never taken a course in it, my understanding of it is that it allows you to recall the event without actually reliving it. So, even hearing my sister's first name caused panic. I'm working through this through exposure therapy. Yes. So exposure therapy is where you confront whatever it is you're afraid of. So for example, I had a client one time when I was going through my practicum internship. Actually, no, was it my internship? No, it was when I was first in private practice. Holy crap. So, she had been in a horrific car accident. She had been rear-ended by a meth head, and the guy hit her at 50 miles an hour on an off-ramp. And she had brain injuries. She doesn't remember. She remembers stopping the car, and then she doesn't remember anything until she woke up in the hospital like 2 weeks later. But whenever she got near a car, her car in particular, she would have a full-blown panic attack and be unable to drive. And that's gonna curtail her life. She was young, it's like she should have been able to go out and go do things and live a life. So what we did was exposure therapy. So at first we talked about the event. We talked about the trauma. We talked about not remembering. We talked about that. Eventually we started walking out to the parking lot and having her just sit in the passenger side of the car. And then eventually we had her sit in the driver's side of the car. And it took months. It took months because it's frightening, because your amygdala is lit up like a Christmas tree going, no. We got our head slammed into the windshield. No, I don't want to do that. So exposure therapy is really good because it forces you to confront whatever it is that your body is going, don't do this. So that works really well if it's something like being in a car accident, being in a motorcycle accident, that type of thing. Or, fear of malls, fear of enclosed spaces, that type of thing. So that's exposure therapy. Reprocessing. Thank you. I knew there was eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. Michael, you rock. Thank you. Okay. Can you get CPTSD from non-dramatic abuse? None of my narcissists have yelled at me or been physical. It was more like an ongoing, low, intense bullying. That's emotional abuse, sweetie. That's traumatic. Don't minimalize it. It's traumatic. When somebody puts you down, when somebody makes you feel like doo-doo, that's trauma. Healthy, normal people do not make each other feel like doo-doo. They don't. It just, no. Yeah, that's trauma, sweetheart. Don't minimalize it. So yes, you can get CPTSD from that. Hey, Georgina. Okay. I would have long moments as a child where I felt like real life had taken on a cartoon quality. I started to recognize they happened after encounters with my mom's rage. Wow. Yes. Abso-freaking-lutely. Yeah. And when you're leaving an abusive situation, the world is going to take on a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Unreal quality. So like when I was a little kid, and I talk about this in my first book, What's Wrong with Your Dad? When I was a little kid, I used to pretend that my parents were aliens and my real parents got kidnapped, because who the hell are these bozos? Seriously. So yeah, we, as little kids, we start, kind of trying to adjust and figure out what the hell's going on, and we come up with a story that works. So yeah, or we just, kind of dissociate and be like, wow, this is not real. What the hell? Yeah, absolutely. How to deal with CPTSD when you have to work with your former abusive ex. Oh, sweet baby Jesus. Okay, that's a tough one. I would love to see you get out of there, honestly. The other thing that you're going to do is you're going to have to self-soothe a lot. You're going to have to do a lot of inner work on yourself. You're going to have to learn how to self-soothe and take care of you, and learn how to gray rock. Gray rock, no contact, keep them at arm's length. Don't take anything personally. Do a lot of breathing, lots of breathing. Yoga, love yoga. And meditation. Meditation will help as well. If you have to see them all the time, that's going to be hard, which is why I'm saying you may want to consider getting a different job. Because is it worth it? Is it worth it? Really? That's do a pro and a con list. Is this worth it? Is having to see them all the time worth it? If it is, then you figure out a way to work with it. If it's not, get the hell out, get a different job, be happy, go live your life. Okay. Any correlation between CPTSD and addiction? Yes, absolutely. We're trying to numb ourselves. Absolutely. Why do you think so many veterans have got drug and alcohol issues and painkiller issues? And yeah, you betcha. You betcha. Because the thoughts, the feelings, the panic, the fear, the horror, the whatever is so intense, and we just want to numb. That's why we dissociate. It's like, yes, there is definitely an addiction between CPTSD and PTSD and addiction. You bet. And that's why it's so important to start working on it. So important to confront it. So important to confront those thoughts, confront those fears. Take control of them. Take your power back. Don't allow the abuser to control you. Don't allow the event to own you. Don't. So that's why it's really, really important to work on yourself. Okay. Okay. I would love to be a Time Lord. Me too. Wouldn't that be fun? Okay. If you have OCD symptoms like needing symmetry, tapping things, even numbers, can that indicate a low level of borderline? I'm worried that CPTSD might not be my only problem. No, borderlines tend not to be OCD. They can be, because it is part of the 10 major personality disorders. So maybe this is a good time to switch over into talking about borderline, because of the rage that people with PTSD, CPTSD have, they can get misdiagnosed as borderline. So why don't we talk about borderline personality disorder? Hang on, half a tick. Let me get to the page here. 663. Okay. 663. Okay, borderline personality disorder. Here's the diagnostic criteria for that. And remember, everything is on a spectrum. So you can have traits of all the way down to full-blown malignant, okay? So a pervasive pattern of instability of interpersonal relationships. In other words, you never can stay friends with people for very long. And I mean like literally weeks or months, that's it, before it blows up. It's like constantly fighting, constantly arguing, constantly, you're always finding something to start an argument over. That is the hallmark of this. Self-image and affects and marked impulsivity. So very impulsive. So there's a pattern of instability in the self-image. There's a pattern of instability in the affects. Marked impulsivity beginning in early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts as indicated by 5 or more of the following. Number 1, frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. Okay, so like I said, borderline personality disorder is rooted in trauma. So if you've got an insecure attachment to a parent and you've got the genes that make you susceptible to borderline, you're going to have that dismissive attachment disorder. Okay. So remember, a secure attachment is mom and dad are there, or the caregiver is there. Sun comes up in the east, you're safe. An insecure attachment is when you're not really sure they're going to be there, and are you safe or are you not? And the way you cope with it is the dismissive type of attachment, which is to push people away. And that's oftentimes what borderline personality disordered sufferers do, because they're trying to stay safe. They're trying to discard before they get discarded. So it's an ego defense mechanism, and it's a way to try to stay safe. Number 2, a pattern of unstable and intense interpersonal relationships characterized by alternating extremes of idealization and devaluation. So they get with somebody much like a narcissist, boom, off the bat. It's like they meet somebody and, oh my God, they want to be their boyfriend or girlfriend. They want to marry them within 2 weeks. They want to live with them within a month. They've moved in with them. And they love them. They're great. I love you. You're fabulous. Oh, I hate you. You're terrible. I love you. I hate you. I love you. I hate you. I love you. I hate you. There's a book called I Love You, I Hate You by Randy Krieger, which is all about borderline personality disorder. That's one of the hallmarks. It's like, it's either they love you or they hate you. There's no in between. It's called splitting. So what happens with somebody who has personality disorder, especially borderline, is they don't know how to negotiate the grays. Everything is black or white, good or bad, all or nothing, which, interestingly enough, is also addict thinking. So there is that splitting. There is that it's good, bad, all, nothing, black, white. And that's not the world. The world is a plethora of colors and a whole bunch of grays. And so learning how to negotiate the grays and the colors and the differences and flowing back and forth is really important for somebody with borderline personality disorder to help them navigate the world, because the world is not black and white. They want to make it black and white, but it's not. Okay. And they idealize and then they devalue. They either love you or they hate you. Love you, hate you, love you, hate you, love you, hate you. I love you, I hate you. Identity disturbance, marked and persistent unstable image or sense of self. They don't know who they are. So they start adopting other people's personalities. They become other people, single, white, female, anybody. They become other people, they try to become that person because they feel like they are not strong enough for whoever they need to be. They don't trust who they are, so they want to become somebody else. And so they start adopting that person's personality. It's kind of creepy. And it also isn't good for them, because it's like, you need to be you. You need to go do you. You're not this other person. You are you. So impulsivity in at least 2 areas that are potentially self-damaging: spending, sex, substance abuse, reckless driving, binge eating. That can also include gambling. So they're very impulsive. Very impulsive. I had one that took their credit card to Vegas and decided to put everything on the credit card, and they were in debt $78,000. It's like, what are you doing? So, and that is also why borderline personality disorder gets misdiagnosed as bipolar, and bipolar gets misdiagnosed as borderline because of the impulsivity issue. So we'll talk more about that in just a minute. Recurrent suicidal behaviors, gestures or threats or self-mutilating behaviors. So this is the difference between a narcissist and a borderline. Narcissists will usually never do the suicidal gestures, ever. They can't conceive of harming themselves. But people with borderline personality disorder, in an effort to control and manipulate, will use the suicidal gestures to try to control and manipulate people around them. And it's an expression of the pain they are going through. So again, Dialectic behavioral therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy, those are the only two modalities that really, really help with any sort of personality disorder, especially borderline, but I would recommend dialectic behavioral therapy. Affective instability due to marked reactivity of mood, intense episodic dysphoria, irritability, or anxiety, usually lasting a few hours and only rarely more than a few days. So again, this gets misdiagnosed as bipolar because they're mood swings. They have mood swings. They angry, lovey-dovey, sad, okay, up and down, all over the map. And so they get misdiagnosed as having bipolar and vice versa. Chronic feelings of emptiness, like nothing will ever fill them. Nothing is ever good enough. Nothing is ever good enough. Inappropriate, intense anger or difficulty controlling anger, frequent displays of temper, constant anger, or recurrent physical fights. Again, that's another reason why it gets misdiagnosed as bipolar. Transient stress-related paranoid ideation or severe dissociative symptoms. Everybody's out to get them. Everybody's out to get them. That's one of the hallmarks. So anyway, that's borderline personality disorder, and that often gets misdiagnosed with bipolar because in bipolar, the classic bipolar is where it's the brain produces all the feel-good chemicals, okay? So the neuroepinephrines, endorphins, dopamine, serotonins, yada, yada, yada. It's unable to reuptake those. And so the brain gets flooded with the feel-good chemicals, which causes the mania and the impulsivity and, all of that. And that's when people do really crazy things. Like when I worked at the homeless shelter, I had a gentleman who suffered from bipolar and he hated taking his meds, hated it. Really hard to keep him on it. Why? Because the mania part of it is like a meth high. And so people love that feeling. It's very creative. You can do a lot of cool stuff on it, except that he would have psychotic features with it. And the voices would tell him that he needed to go to Hollywood and he needed to get a singing contract. Never mind the fact that he was almost 70 years old. He was like 65 years old, couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, seriously. And he was convinced he was the next Elvis when he was up on his high. So yeah, I mean, this is why they get misdiagnosed as each other. So here's the other complication. Hang on, I need to drink some water. Borderline personality disorder also borders on psychotic thinking, and it has traits of all 10 major personality disorders. So, hold on. Oh, so sorry. Oh my God, that was my microphone. I just made everybody deaf. Okay, so hold on. So in borderline personality disorder, the problem of it is that a person with borderline personality disorder can and often does exhibit traits of all 10 major personality disorders at any one given time, which is why it's so important to get a really good diagnosis, because if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to misdiagnose it. So, let's see, where did it go? All right, hang on. Sorry guys, talk amongst yourselves, hang on. Here we go. Okay, so in the personality disorders, there's a bunch of different clusters. There's cluster A, cluster B, and cluster C. Most abusers are going to be found in the cluster Bs. So let's talk about the other ones. So cluster A is the paranoid personality disorder. That means they think everybody's out to get them. Borderline, that's one of the symptoms, is that they have transient stress-related paranoia. Schizoid and schizotypal. So those two are related to schizophrenia. They have bizarre thinking, oh, you're wearing that scarf, so you're signaling to me that you want me to drive out and meet you, that kind of thing. That's kind of the thoughts that you have when you have schizotypal. Schizoid is you dress very bizarrely, you inappropriately, so like heavy winter clothes in the middle of summer, no social kind of understanding, that kind of thing. Antisocial personality disorder, we're going to talk about that. Those are the ones that don't think that the rules apply to them. And borderline definitely has a part of that. Borderline personality disorder, I just read that. Histrionic personality disorder, which I think is probably going to disappear in the next DSM. Histrionic was something that was coined by Freud. So, women were hysterical. It had to do with their sexuality, blah, 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 blah. Fuck you, Freud, you fucking misogynistic piece of shit. Don't get me started. I fucking hate Freud. I really do. So histrionic personality disorder is somebody who is overly sexual, which borderlines absolutely can be. Dress inappropriately, very sexually, want attention, you know, that kind of thing. Very histrionic. They lose their keys, they lose their purse, they lose their wallet, and suddenly it's the end of the world, and they're just running around like a screaming Mimi. You know, look at me, look at me, look at me. Where's my purse? Where's my wallet? Where's my keys? Where's this? Where's that? You know, everything's the end of the world. Then there's narcissistic personality disorder. Okay, so antisocial, borderline, histrionic, and narcissistic are in the cluster Bs. That is where you're going to find the abusers. The cluster As are the paranoid, the schizoid, and the schizotypal. Those three. Okay, so the abusers are found in the antisocial, borderline, histrionic, and narcissistic personality disorders. Okay, cluster Cs are the avoidant personality disorders. So if they are not assured of success, they won't even try it, if that makes any sort of sense. So they avoid. It's like if they're not assured of absolute success, they won't even attempt it. Dependent personality disorder. A person cannot make a decision without asking 100,000 million people and needs somebody else to tell them what to do. That's dependent. Borderlines too can be like that. Obsessive compulsive disorder. Obsessing, like, you know, going back over every single thing that anybody ever told you and ruminating and thinking about it and, you know, that's obsessing. Obsessive compulsive disorder has a whole other list of things to it. And if you want me to, I can go through and read the diagnostic criteria for that. So those are the major personality disorders. So borderlines oftentimes have traits of all 10 major personality disorders. And as a result, they will then border on psychotic thinking. Their thinking is very, there's a word for it. My brain just left the building. It's very Old Testament. It's either good or bad, black or white, right or wrong, and they're going to punish you if it's not right. You know, it's a very odd way of thinking. It's like an eye for an eye. They're very tit for tat, And they have a very difficult time negotiating flow and not taking things personally and understanding that, you know, not everything is meant as a personal attack, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's borderline personality disorder. So let's talk about narcissistic personality disorder. Okay, 669. Let me see if there's anybody that has questions here because I've been busy talking. I'm scared that I have borderline. My ex told me and everyone that I have borderline. How do I know for sure I don't have BPD? He divorced me and took my child because I have borderline. I fought in family court for 12 years. Holy cow. Well, sweetie, what you want to do is you want to go get diagnosed by somebody that actually has training in personality disorders. And having a diagnosis of borderline is not necessarily the end of the world, okay? When I talk about malignant, guys, when I talk about abusers, I am talking about the ones at the far end of the spectrum, the dark triads, the ones that are just completely batshit, motherfucking crazy and will do anything and everything to harm others, okay? That's what I'm talking about. Traits of can be worked with if, caveat, you're willing to roll up your sleeves and do the hard work. So it can be worked with if it's down at the lower end of the spectrum. And plus the fact, unless your ex is a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or a counselor of some sort, why are you believing them? You know, it's like they will say horrible things. Abusers will say that we're the crazy ones. Abusers will say that we're the ones that are the abuser. They'll say that we're the ones that are this, that, and the other thing. They'll say anything and everything. It's the smear campaign. If you watched the show last week, I talked about the smear campaign. And yeah, they will say that we're the crazy ones, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you're really worried about it, go see a counselor that is well-versed in borderline personality disorders, DBT, okay? And they'll let you know whether you got it or not. There's a great book called The Borderline Survival Guide by Chapman and Gratz, and it's very helpful for people that have borderline personality disorder on the lower end of the spectrum. Usually by the time somebody gets to the middle or to the end of the spectrum, they're so invested in being right, they're so invested in harming, they're so invested in destroying, they're so invested in their ego, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that they never go get help. So the hallmark of somebody that I know does not have a true full-blown personality disorder is they're willing to go get help. If you're willing to go get help, you probably don't have full-blown. So there it is. Okay. Hey, Lisa from New Zealand. I want to go there so bad. Are you from the North Island or the South Island? Let me know. Okay. Are eating disorders considered a way to self-harm, or are they more of a coping mechanism? Well, yes and yes. eating disorders can be a coping mechanism because you're trying to control. So remember, when somebody's completely out of control of their own life, the only thing they do have control over is what they put in their mouth. And so that's where eating disorders are born of trauma. They are born of feeling out of control. And so the one thing you do have control over is cutting that up into very teeny tiny little pieces and putting it in your mouth. So yeah, eating disorders are definitely a coping mechanism. It's a maladaptive coping mechanism. You want to find something that's a little healthier than that. But it is born of trauma. So again, get with a good therapist. I'd be willing to bet that it has something to do with some sort of trauma in the past. So yeah, absolutely work on that. Okay, you're welcome, Catherine. Okay. Hello, Chris. Do you think someone with CPTSD can be abusive? Yes, absolutely. My mom, I think, has CPTSD from her malignant borderline histrionic MOAND? Oh dear, I don't know what a MOAND is. I think that was a misspell. It wasn't until after grandmother. Okay, it wasn't until after my grandmother died that my mom went crazy and really abusive. I can sort of fit her into covert narcissist, but otherwise not really sure if she fits any personality disorder. Could it just be from PTSD? No. So here's the thing. When someone has a difficult relationship with somebody, and it's a parent, and that parent was abusive, and that parent dies, and that kid never dealt with it, never went to therapy, never worked on the issue, never worked on the original insecure attachment, never dealt with the guilt, never dealt with the abuse, never dealt with any of that stuff, they are absolutely going to go completely off their rocker, you bet. You bet. Because that's just what happens, because it's like your brain is sitting here going, okay, this person was my caregiver, but yet they were abusive, but yet I feel guilty, but yet they're dead. And oh my God, and I'm glad they're dead, but I'm really sad they're dead, but I'm not. Brain nuclear meltdown. Boom. So yeah, they are going to be abusive. My dad did the exact same thing. So when his mother died, he had a very contentious relationship with his mom. And when she died, he went completely toys in the attic, around the bend, truly gone fishing. Any Pink Floyd fans out there know what I'm talking about. So yeah, he just went completely batshit crazy. I mean, like lost it. Capital L, capital I, lost it. So yeah, that definitely happens, but it happens when you don't deal with the abuse. It happens when you don't deal with the original issue. And when that abuser finally dies, if you're not handling your shit, yeah, it's going to come out sideways. You betcha. But no, that does not come from CPTSD. It comes from not handling your shit. And I would be willing to bet that there's some PD in there somehow, somewhere. I mean, I don't have them in front of them, so I can't diagnose them, but yeah. Okay. BPD is analyzed to be a brain-related. Here's some great recent research. Oh, fantastic. Social learning and borderline personality disorder, 58 minutes. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Crystal. That's awesome. I think flashbacks get confused with obsessive thinking. Yes, because with a flashback, you can't help it. You really can't. It's because it's your body responding as if the danger is right there, right here, right now. With obsessive thinking, it's like it's ruminating. It just keeps, it's like that coffee commercial. Oh my God, I hate to mention this again. And Arthur, I think, is the one that posted it. So there was an old coffee commercial when I was growing up, and I can't remember, it was like U-Bands or Folgers or something. And the song was never ending. It just kept going. And it was supposed to represent a percolating coffee pot. But that's a great analogy to ruminating thoughts, because they just keep going, and they just don't stop. So that's the difference. Flashbacks are when you flash back to the event. You flash back to being hit. You flash back to being harmed. You flash back to being screamed at. You flash back to what the actual event was. So, okay, you like my nails. Thank you. I've got a great nail tech. She's so funny. Okay, with years of good therapy, meditation, and reading, I've diagnosed myself and I love it. Do you encourage that? Yeah, here's the thing. It drives me crazy when I hear therapists be like, don't diagnose yourself, blah, 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 blah. I mean, yes and no, because it's like you can misdiagnose yourself. Absolutely. And though, like I said, it's great to do research and it's great to figure out what's going on. And if something resonates with you, trust that. Trust that. If something resonates with you, go with it. Work on yourself. Learn as much as you can. Absolutely. I'm not a great fan of diagnosing yourself, because sometimes people come up with diagnoses and they come in and they sit in my office and I'm like, no, 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 that's not you. So like, for example, somebody sits on my office and says, oh my God, I have borderline personality disorder. And it turns out, no, they had a horrifically abusive childhood. No, you've got CPTSD. Hello, let's work on that. Let's work on self-esteem. Let's work on this, that, and the other thing. So although working that and working to help with borderline, very similar. Again, overlapping. So, okay. Yes, it was you, and I can't get it out of your head. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh my God. That, I swear to God, it was like 40 years ago, 50 years ago. I still remember that damn commercial. Anyway, can your body flashback and not necessarily your mind? Yes. Oh God, yes. So for example, your body could start reacting in a fear response without the necessary corresponding flashback happening, because your body is recognizing that this is all very familiar and not in a good way, if that makes any sort of sense. So yes, your body is oftentimes 3 steps ahead of your head. You know what I mean? At least consciously. And it's just a way for us to try to stay safe. It's just your body kind of going, holy shit, this is dangerous. We don't need to be here. What the fuck? You know, that kind of thing. So yeah, absolutely, that can happen. You betcha. Okay. Yes, body memories are real. Body memories are real. And sometimes they come from pre-verbal. So if there was abuse going on when you were a baby, and your body's responding, it could be pre-verbal. It could just be your body going, whoa, this feels really familiar and I don't like it. And you don't know why. And then you kind of need to figure it out and all that sort of stuff. So, okay. Yes. So with abusers, and complicated grief, even though this is kind of off topic, but I want to bring it back up because Trisha posted, and I hope to God it finally posted on We Need to Talk. She posted a great thing on complicated grief. So when we have been abused by our abusers, they don't allow us to freaking grieve. So like my dad, for example, would hit me anytime I cried. And he would basically say things like, you know, I'll give you something to cry about, or, you know, Marines don't cry. It took me until I was freaking 16 to figure out I hadn't enlisted. So, you know, it was like, what? So they don't allow us to have healthy, normal grief because they can't handle the emotion. They can't deal with it. A normal, healthy person can deal with somebody else's grieving or somebody else's sadness or somebody else's happy or joy or whatever. They can deal with it. But an abuser cannot, and they shut down their kids, their family, their friends, whoever, and basically are like, you know, you can't grieve. Don't you dare be sad. Don't you dare be crying. Don't you dare be, basically is what they're telling us. So we get really effed up when it comes to grief. We really do. And it's really important for us to experience our emotions, because our emotions get shut down when we're in an abusive relationship. We're told not to feel. And it's not okay to feel, and it's not okay to feel anything other than what the abuser wants us to feel. So you got to feel it to heal it. And grief is one of them. And unfortunately, in this lifetime, grief is going to happen. And every time we have a new loss, a new grief, a new, you know, a death, a loss, you know, something like that, it's going to bring up all of the other losses, all of the other grief, all of the other everything. And it's really, really important to feel it. Feel it, heal it. Write it out. Write a letter to your grief. Write a letter to whatever it is that you're feeling, sad, depressed, losing, grieving, whatever. Write a letter, the good, the bad, the ugly, the horrific. Get it all out of your head, and at the end, say goodbye, and then take it out to the barbecue and burn it. Let it go. Let it go. Allow yourself to feel. And, you know, like I said, when we're dealing with grief, when we're dealing with all of the emotions, it can be, like I said, one time I had 27 pages of teeny tiny little writing, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. That was a lot of anger, you know? So get out whatever it is you need to get out. Get out whatever you need to get out. And if it's something that, you know, if it's someone you loved and you lost them and you were never able to express it, write them a letter. Dear mom, dear dad, dear whoever died that you were not allowed to properly grieve. I miss you so much, or I feel this, or I feel that. Or if it was the abuser you're saying goodbye to, dear dad, dear mom, you fucking asshole. Here's what I'd really like to say to you, you son of a bitch, or whatever it is you need to say. Do you see where I'm going with that? Get it out. You're not going to hell. You're not. And this society has this whole bullshit thing about don't speak ill of the dead. Oh, bullshit, motherfucker. If you need to say shit to them, say shit to them. Get it out of your head. Get it onto paper. Trot it out to the barbecue. Read it out loud once. Light it on fire. Let it go. Let it go, because it's not going to do any good sticking up here. Okay, I hope that answered the question. So if you guys can go on to We Need to Talk, Trisha posted a thing on complicated grief, and it was really good, and I hope to God it actually posted because I approved it, and Facebook is stupid sometimes. Okay, yes, we get told we're overly dramatic or too emotional, and I would like to reiterate this again. Abusers tell us that we're too sensitive. That is a classical abuse move. You're too sensitive. You're too emotional. You're too ... fill in the blank. And it's a way to control. It's a way to get us to not feel. It's a way to invalidate us. It's a way to make us feel less than. It's a way to tell us that what we're feeling is not real. Again, gaslighting. It's a way to devalue and discard, basically. So yeah. So anytime anybody says you're too fill in the blank, run. Do not walk to the nearest exit. Okay, so let's talk about narcissistic personality disorder. Then we're going to go to antisocial, because there's a lot of confusion on that. So narcissistic personality disorder, page 669. 669. Talk amongst yourselves while I find it. Okay. Narcissistic personality disorder. Now, there is a vast difference between somebody being kind of full of themselves, down on one end of the spectrum, and being malignant, down on the other. So, narcissistic personality disorder is, here we go, a pervasive pattern of grandiosity in fantasy or behavior, the need for admiration, and lack of empathy beginning in early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts, is indicated by 5 or more of the following. And this is an important point I want to make. I had somebody contact me and say, well, can you diagnose a 5-year-old as being narcissistic? No, you can't. And here's the reason why. Kids are very self-centered. That's just part of the cognitive developmental way that kids are. Kids have a lot of magic thinking at that age, and they truly believe that the sun rises and sets on their ass because they don't know any different. They haven't been out in the world. They haven't been exposed to there are other people, other things, we have to teach our kids empathy. It's not just, boom, they come out of the womb knowing how to do all this stuff. So you have to guide them. You have to teach them how to be empathic. You have to teach them kindness. You have to teach them. And oftentimes what abusive parents do is they basically turn their kids loose and don't teach them a damn thing and just go figure it out. You're 18, screw you. So you got to teach them. You can't diagnose somebody with a personality disorder if they're little ones, and you don't want to do it until they're in past 18 for sure, for a couple of reasons. One, have you guys been around 5-year-olds? They're very self-centered. Teenagers are very self-centered, and young adults can be very self-centered. The brain doesn't stop developing until the late 20s. So you really want to hold off on that diagnosis for that until you are for sure, and they're older. So, all right, there's that. Okay. All right, number 1, has a grandiose sense of self-importance, exaggerates achievements, tries to make themselves better than they really are. So they lie about what they do. They make what they do sound like some sort of, Mother Teresa humanitarian thing, when in reality, they're like a collection agent or something. Does that make sense? Okay. They lie about their talents, and they expect to be recognized as superior without commiserate achievements. So oftentimes narcissists will start spouting off psychology stuff. They've never gotten a master's degree. They've never worked in the field, but because they took a class once, they think they know it all. And they will tell everybody that they are smarter than the psychologist. They are smarter than the counselor. They're smarter than the psychiatrist. That's one of the hallmarks of a narcissistic personality disorder. Okay. They don't have the degree to back it up. And somebody asked me one time, they're like, well, what is the difference between certainty and narcissism? So, being narcissistic. So certainty is you got the knowledge to back it up. You have the degree, you have the time in the field, you have the research, you have all of this stuff. Somebody who doesn't have any of that stuff and just starts spouting off, that's arrogance. That's absolute arrogance. Certainty is when you've got the background and the knowledge and the degree and the studies and the. Difference between certainty and arrogance. So somebody who's arrogant is somebody who just, starts talking, and narcissists do this all the time. They start talking about stuff as if they know what they're talking about. And 9 times out of 10, they don't, because they don't know anything about it, but they think they do. So I was going to say something about our current president, but I'll just stay out of that for now. So anyway, moving on, is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. So they want the best of everything. And they're obsessed with it. It's like it has to be the best. They have to go first class all the way. They have to associate with, people that they feel are in their league, as it were. Believes he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high status people or institutions. So snobs, total snobs, it's like, I'm so much better than you all. Sorry. Requires excessive admiration, constantly having to bolster them up, constantly. It's not just like that every once in a while. It's like, does this look good on me? Do I look okay? It's not just that. It's like constant, nonstop. They need to be bolstered all the time. But when it comes time for them to bolster you, they are nowhere to be found. Has a sense of entitlement. Oh, sweet baby Jesus, you have no idea. Like nobody's business. Have an unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with his or her expectations. Those are the ones who march into restaurants and start pitching a fit when they don't get their table, and they do the whole, don't you know who I am bullshit. It's like, oh, for fuck's sake. Really, who are you trying to impress? So, they expect to be their needs, wishes, wants, desires. What about my wants? What about my needs? I've actually heard them say that. So they have an unrealistic sense of entitlement. They think the world owes them everything on a silver platter, and they don't care who they have to kill or hurt to get it. Is interpersonally exploitive, takes advantage of others in order to achieve his or her own ends. They will lie, they will cheat, they will steal, they will gaslight, they will convince the person that they're targeting to lie, and they will say that everybody lies. And no, everybody does not lie. You cannot and have integrity. You have to have integrity. If you don't have integrity, you have lost who you are. And that's oftentimes what happens to us as targets of abuse, is we've lost who we are because we have allowed that person to get us to lie, or to get us to cheat, or to get us to steal, or to get us to treat family members or friends horribly in order to please them. And we've lost a part of ourselves. And that's what we have to get back. We have to be filled with integrity. Words, you have to be a woman or a man of your word. If you're not, you ain't got nothing. You got to be a person of your words, period. Okay. Lacks empathy, is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. This is what we talked about, Tricia and I were talking about earlier with the complicated grief. How dare you cry? How dare you have an emotion? How dare you have a need? How dare you have a want? How dare you not be on the same page as I am? How dare you? How dare you? How dare you? How dare you be an independent person? Yeah, that's how they are. Is envious of others or believes that others are envious of him or her. They are horrifically envious. It's like they want what everybody else has because they don't think they have it within themselves. And here's the crazy thing. They target empaths. They target normal, kind, gentle people because they want that. But yet, as soon as they get their hooks into it and they have it, they do everything they can to kill it because they are fucking jealous like nobody's business. And if they can't have that quality, well, then how dare their partner be able to do that? If their partner is an upstanding person and tells the truth, they're going to make sure to make them a liar. They are. That's what they do. That's how they kill us. That's how they kill our soul. That's the soul killer. I think that's what a narcissist is. They're a soul killer. Is often envious or believes that other people are envious of him or her. Shows arrogant, haughty behaviors or attitudes. Treats the waitstaff like shit. There is no excuse for that. I'm sorry. I used to do waitressing. It sucks. Treat your fucking waiters and waitresses nicely. It is not their fucking fault when the fucking steak does not come out right. They're not the goddamn chef. So there's that. Not that I'm passionate about that or anything, but see how they treat people that can literally offer them nothing, right? See how they treat the homeless. See how they treat people less than them in a less economic status, or treat wait staff, or treat somebody who is not as quote unquote powerful as they are. See how they treat people. Do they, thumb their nose? Do they treat them awfully? Well, then you're dealing with a narcissist. They think they're better than everybody else. So there's that. So honestly, if you're out on a date with one, see how they treat the wait staff. See how they behave when things go south. See how they behave when the food doesn't come out right. You know what I do? I go, okay, it didn't come out right. Do I want to eat it anyway, or do I need to send it back? I don't know. And if I send it back, I'm always very apologetic. It's like, oh, guys, I'm so sorry, but can I get it like not cooked all the way through? That would be great. You're nice about it. You're not a fucking dick about it. Okay. So that is narcissistic personality disorder. Any questions on that? Let me see what we got here, because I've been so busy talking. Hang on just a second. Okay. Okay. Narcs can treat children as if they are adults. Yes, absolutely. They will demand that the child behave like an adult. And that's not fair to the kid. It's like, I'm sorry, your 5-year-old is not an adult. They're a kid. They're going to do kid stuff. They're going to be inappropriate and screaming and yelling and doing things. And yeah, they do. They tend to treat their children as if they are little adults, and they get very angry with them and very disappointed in them if they do not behave accordingly, because it reflects back on them. So yeah, don't get me started. Yeah, they do that. Let's see. Okay. For a long time, I thought my ex was a psychopath because he had none of the grandiosity stuff. Now I'm more inclined to believe he was a covert narcissist. Yes. Okay. Covert narcissist. So, okay, let's talk about the different types of narcissists. So there's the overt, there's the grandiosity, there's the grandiose type, the kind that are like, look at me, look at me, look at me. I'm so fabulous. I'm awesome. I'm this, I'm that. they're doing things, aggrandizement. Think of our current president, that kind of thing. They're very grandiose. It's all about them. Me, I, more my dick, basically. That is the grandiose ones. So then there's the covert ones. The covert ones are the ones who have not yet slid to grandiosity. So think of it this way. On one end of the spectrum, you've got the coverts, and then you've got the communals, and then you've got the grandiose, and then you're sliding into malignancy. So coverts haven't got the pathology yet to be grandiose, but they will eventually, because nobody can keep the mask up for long. So what grandioses do, or what coverts do, is they're very sneaky. They're very, very sneaky. They are the ones who usually learn just enough about psychology to start dripping poison into the ear of the target, to try to twist anything and everything that the family and friends have done for them, to try to make the family and friends the bad guy, and to isolate the target. They're very sneaky. They're very dangerous. They are the ones who will take just a smidgen of truth and then pile on the lies around it to make it sound convincing to the target. So for example, if you've got a covert narcissist that is lying, gaslighting, rewriting history, and trying to get the target of abuse involved in unhealthy activities such as doing drugs, doing alcohol, smoking, they'll take just a smidgen of truth. Oh, well, there's a report out that says that drinking red wine is safe, blah, 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 blah. So here, you need to drink an entire bottle every night. Do you see where I'm going with that? It's like they take just a smidgen of truth and then wrap it up in a lie and then sell it to the target of abuse to harm themselves. They basically want the target of abuse dead, is really what they're going for, because that's the ultimate power trip. They did it to them, and the target of abuse allowed it. So they're sneaky. They're absolutely sneaky. They're the ones that try to pretend that they know more about psychology than a psychologist does, or that a counselor does, or that a psychiatrist does, or whatever. So they're very sneaky about that. They'll slip in just enough stuff to sound truthful, or that is the truth, but then they'll wrap it up in a package of lies and sell it and be poisonous, dripping poison, dripping poison, dripping poison, dripping poison. Okay, so that is the covert. The communal narcissist is, I want you to think like the religious nuts. So like the ones who are, I'm so pious, I'm so wonderful, and they're hiding behind Jesus's robes, basically. And then it turns out, oh, by the way, they're doing hookups in the men's bathroom, and they are beating their wife, and they're molesting their children, and they're, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, or they've got a mistress, or they've, whatever. They're the ones that are homophobic and sit there and go how horrible gays are, and yet they're gay. they're having hookups. So those are communal narcissists because they can't accept or deal with who they really are. And so they turn it outwards, they project, and they try to make everybody else wrong. And there it goes. So that's a communal narcissist. They're usually pillars of the community. They're usually religious nuts. They're usually the ones that go to church 3 or 4 times a week and are right up there in front. Hallelujah. I'm so pure. I'm so this. And then it turns out, well, not so much, because behind closed doors, they're abusing the living shit out of their family. That's communal. And then grandiose, obviously, is the look at me, look at me, look at me, me, I'm more my dick. And then you've got the malignant narcissists. You've got the dark triad, which is antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, and Machiavellianism, which is the control freak part of it. So we are going to get into that next. I'm going to go to the antisocial personality disorder. Hang on. Have a tick. Let me make sure I answered all the questions. Okay. Hey, Lauren, how are you? Okay. Okay. NPD to ASPD. Yes, we're going to do that. I'd like to know more about the covert narcissism. My mom aggressively targeted her husbands and they got away. But since adolescence, she aggressively targets me and makes me feel like I can't trust my reality because she isn't that way with anyone else, to the point where they recognize it. Yeah, they are very much one way, depending on who the audience is, and then another way with the target of abuse. Absolutely. And all narcissists do that. Grandiose ones do that, although they tend to start abusing their targets in public at some point. But the covert ones, at least in the beginning, hide it because they're still doing the look at me, I'm so innocent, I'm so wonderful, I'm a pillar of the community, I'm great, I'm this, I'm that, I'm blah, 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 blah. And they are very much play the victim. Absolutely. Covert narcissists play the victim, and grandiose do that too when it suits their purposes. But covert narcissists, you will find, play the victim more often than communal or grandiose. So if they're constantly the victim, if everybody hates them and poor me and nobody's giving me a chance and blah, 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 at some point you just got to go, okay, 9 out of 10 dentists think you're a cavity. Hello. It's like you kind of got to start thinking, okay, well, wait a minute. This person's trying to tell me that they're the victim, but all of these people are telling me they don't like this person. You probably want to start looking at why. And unfortunately, as a target of abuse, we don't, because we're so ego invested in being right that we're unwilling to do that. And that's to our detriment, because then we end up staying with the abuser for much longer than we need to. If we could get our ego out of the way and start looking at things logically and go, wait a minute, if all of my family and friends don't like this person, is it all my family and friends, or is it this one person? What's the common denominator? Common denominator is the one person. So anyway, where does it tip to antisocial? We're going to get to that. Hold on half a second. My therapist once told me my father couldn't be a narcissist, but that he probably had narcissistic traits. She suggested parents are not full bullshit, motherfucker. Oh my God. Bad therapy. Bad therapy. Drives me crazy. No, you can't. Here's the thing. Narcissists will have children as a way to keep the target of abuse with them. Think about that for a second. Narcissists will have children as a way to keep the target of abuse with them, whether the target of abuse is a female or a male, because they don't want to be abandoned. So that does not mean that just because they had kids, they're somehow magically immune to being a narcissist or having borderline personality disorder. Absolutely, parents can and are narcissists. You bet. If they're abusive, they're probably a narcissist. Absolutely. So your therapist was so full of shit, her eyes should be brown, or his eyes should be brown. See, this is why I have a problem with a lot of therapists out there. They don't fucking get it. And that pisses me right the fuck off. And this is why I'm saying every last one of you guys here on this chat should be talking to the APA and the ACA and demand that they keep personality disorders in the DSM, whatever next one is coming out. I think it's coming out in 2018 or 2020, something like that. And that narcissistic abuse syndrome be put into the DSM, and that in their code of ethics, that professors, colleges, universities, if they're going to be teaching LPCs, if they're going to be teaching psychiatrists, psychologists, etc., they must teach about domestic violence, and they must teach about personality disorders, because to do anything else is a disservice to everybody, to both the victims, to the targets, to the abusers, to the etc. Absolutely. Because how is it ever going to change if we're not teaching people on what the real shit is? Just dog face banana patch. Don't get me started. Okay. Too late. Okay. All right. Okay. So Carolyn, your therapist was bad. I'm sorry. I'm going to call it right out. And I know people get pissed off at me like their other therapists when I say that, but I'm sorry. Bad therapy is bad therapy, just like bad acting is bad acting. I will call that out too. Don't get me started about some of those movies coming out of DC. Oh my God. I hear that the next, the Justice League, I heard it wasn't all that great. I heard the Flash Kid was great, but that was about it. So anyway, don't get me started. Okay. Malignant narcissism is where it meets sociopathy. Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to talk more about that. When I tried to break free, it became a smear campaign. Yes, absolutely. And my family believes it. So here's the deal. I talked about smear campaigns last week. I'm going to briefly touch on it now. You cannot control what other people think. Sucks. Be nice if you could. Be nice if you could just like wave a magic wand and go, truth. Here we go, and everybody gets it, but it doesn't work that way. You cannot control what other people think, and what other people think of you is none of your goddamn business. And that's hard for us as empaths. That's hard for us as people pleasers. That's hard for us as codependents because we care deeply what other people think. We have to train ourselves to not care about the smear campaign. We just have to, because otherwise you're going to drive yourself crazy. You're going to ruminate and you're going to drive yourself nuts. Oh my God, this person thinks this of me. Oh my God, this person thinks this of me. Oh my God, this person thinks, okay, so, and the people who truly know you know the truth. And the people who are choosing to believe the smear campaign, that is the universe's sign for you to cut them the fuck out of your life, period. Whether it's friends, families, coworkers, whatever, chuck them to the side, okay? Okay. Are therapists supposed to tell you that there are others in worse situations and in pain so that you need to get over it? No. No. With a side of no and an extra helping of what the fuck? No. God. Bad therapy. No biscuit. Oh my God, that pisses me off. It does. Okay, so here's the deal. So when I'm working with somebody and they're going through something, you validate them. You are not comparing. You cannot compare somebody's pain to somebody's pain. Apples, oranges, hello, different. Everybody's different. Somebody could have a very horribly traumatic experience and another person could go through the same thing and not experience it, but that does not invalidate either one of their experiences. Does that make sense? So you validate. It's like, yes, this sucked. Yeah, this is awful. I totally agree with you. This person was a real fucking asshole, whoever it was. Whatever. You validate. But then you help them go, okay, now what? How do you take your power back? How do you get your power back? How do you rebuild? How do you live your life to the fullest? How do you not let them win, ultimately? And the best revenge is living well. Period. Best revenge is living well. It is. So now what? What's the next step? How do we get from point A to point B? What's the next step? You never invalidate. You never compare. You never tell them, oh, get over it. Fuck that shit. That's a bad therapist. Seriously. Don't get me started. Oh my God. Because perception is everything. Perception is everything. And one person's horrific experience is another person's maybe growth experience, or one person's growth experience is another person's trauma. Everybody is different. You validate, and then you help move forward. Now what? What's the next step? How do we get unstuck? How do we stop living in the past? How do we move forward? It's just like Lauren said, how do we move forward? We're either going backwards or we're moving forward. Which is it? And you help that person move forward. You never ever invalidate them. You never ever compare their pain to somebody else, because that's bad therapy. Okay, hope that cleared that one up. Sometimes I just want to leave this session and go bang my head against a wall when I hear what therapists are doing. I really do. Okay. Okay. All the people I know show me how I need them, but they don't need me. Minimize my emotions and amplify theirs. but then try to tell me it's like the other way around. That is gaslighting. That's gaslighting. That's rewriting history. Absolutely. Trust your gut. Trust your gut. Dog face banana patch. Okay, I cannot take credit for that. That was an old Steve Martin routine. So Steve Martin had this thing about teaching kids to speak wrong. And so instead of speaking real English to them, you would just say something like dog face banana patch. And it was the 70s and I laughed. So anyway, so it was Steve Martin. It was one of his old comedy records. Let's see. Okay. Okay, good. Okay, that answers so far everybody's questions. Okay, let's move on to, holy mackerel, it's a 1:34. Okay, sorry, it's going a little long. Okay, so let's move on to antisocial personality disorder. Let's do that. Hang on. Okay, 6:59. Okay, 59. Okay. Cluster B, antisocial personality disorder, a pervasive pattern of disregard for and violation of the rights of others occurring since age 15 years old as indicated by 3 or more of the following. Excuse me. So you basically have to have oppositional defiance disorder diagnosed before, and then it turns into antisocial. Okay. 3 or more of the following. Number 1, failure to conform to social norms with respect to lawful behaviors as indicated by repeatedly performing acts that are grounds for arrest. This is, now we're getting into the crazy obsessive exes. These are the ones that stalk online. These are the ones that, don't stop. These are the ones that think that it's okay to, make false allegations or try to make you lose your job or try to get in with your employer and make up a bunch of stuff and try to get them to fire you or whatever. They lie, they cheat, they steal. That's antisocial personality disorder. That is one of the main things, is that they feel that they are above the law and that they can manipulate the law to their will. Deceitfulness, as indicated by repeated lying, use of alias, or conning others for personal profit or pleasure. So when a narcissist is lying and then encourages the target of abuse to lie, they have slid into malignancy. They are now antisocial because they lie and they're encouraging their partner to lie. Impulsivity, or failure to plan ahead. They blow through money. They blow through money. They blow through things. They blow up jobs. They tell people to go fuck themselves without thinking of the consequence. They do all sorts of crazy, impulsive things. Irritability and aggressiveness, as indicated by repeated physical fights or assaults. And remember, you only have to have, how many do you have to have of these? I think you only have to have 3. You only have to have 3. So irritability and aggressiveness. So the irritability and aggressiveness could be them keeping you up at night, screaming at you. That I would consider an assault. They won't let you sleep. They take away your safety. They, attack you verbally every single chance they get. Reckless disregard for the safety of self or others. They don't make, they encourage people to drink or to smoke or to whatever. They, drive erratically. They, the rules don't apply to them. Oh, so you're telling me that smoking is bad for me? Well, no, it's not, because I say so. And I want you to smoke too. That's what they do. It's crazy. It is crazy. And it's reckless disregard. And especially if there's children in the house. Holy cow. If there's children in the house and you're smoking, how bad is that? You're exposing to that child to all of this smoke. So, okay. Consistent irresponsibility is indicated by repeated failure to sustain consistent work behavior or honor financial obligations. So they're always trying to run out of their financial responsibilities. They're always trying to find a way out. There's always the newest scheme. There's always the newest flim-flam. There's always the newest con, that kind of thing. Lack of remorse, as indicated by being indifferent to or rationalizing having hurt, mistreated, or stolen from another. So they make up excuses. They excuse why they behaved the way they behaved, and they try to make it sound rational and real. And it's not. There is never an excuse to mistreat or steal or lie or cheat or harm. There's never an excuse, ever. Okay, the individual is at least 18 years of age. There is evidence of conduct disorder with onset before age 15. and usually oppositional defiance disorder as well. The occurrence of antisocial behavior is not exclusively during the course of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. Okay, so because of the impulsivity, that's what they're saying. So in a dark triad, so this is when somebody has narcissism and has slid down to the far end of the spectrum, the dark triad. So they've got all of these behaviors going on. They're lying, they're cheating, they're stealing, they're justifying it, they're rationalizing it, they're making excuses. They're saying, well, everybody does it, you know, that kind of thing. They have slid into the antisocial personality disorder, absolutely. And they want to harm and they enjoy it. This is where the sadism comes in. And somebody asked me a really interesting question on sadism. They were like, well, okay, in BDSM, you were talking about BDSM. Is it anytime okay to hurt somebody and enjoy it? And again, that's a weird area, guys, because if it's consensual and it's hurting, but it's not really hurting, then that's something different. But with antisocial personality disorder, they are sadistic to the point where it's not consensual. The person doesn't want to be hurt. They're enjoying verbally harming them. They're enjoying physically harming them. They're enjoying watching that person suffer. They're enjoying watching that person lack of sleep. They're enjoying watching the look on their face when they start screaming at them. They're enjoying the harm that they are inflicting. Okay, that's sadistic. That's wrong because it's not consensual. The other person is not enjoying it. They don't want it. It's not welcome. So that's sadism. So anyway, that is antisocial personality disorder. So what happens is that in the spectrum, they just keep sliding down. And as they get away with stuff and as they age, they get worse. They don't get better. They get worse. And their manipulations become more grandiose. They become more outrageous. They become more harmful, more hurtful, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they are to the point where they are actively wanting to harm and inflict pain on the target of abuse. And they are actively wanting to harm and inflict pain on anybody, family or friends or coworkers that see the abuser for who and what they really are. And they will do anything to hurt. They will do and say anything to get the family and friends in trouble with their job or their friends or whatever. So, but the beautiful thing of it is that they're usually very, very obvious about it. So it's pretty easy to kind of be like, whatever. If you're a family or a friend. If you're the target of abuse, though, you're so indoctrinated into the Stockholm syndrome that you can't see it because they'll lie and they'll lie about lying. And they'll lie about your family and friends and convince you that the family and the friends are all in the wrong and they're the only one that's right. And you're so in the fog that you cannot see that, hey, hello, again, common denominator, the abuser, not the family and the friends. It's the abuser. So if they've convinced you to get rid of your family and your friends, Houston, you got a problem. You're in an abusive relationship. Okay. All right. Yes, psychopath. Okay, so let's talk about that. So antisocial personality disorder. So in the past, it was called psychopath, sociopath, and now antisocial. Again, the reason we have changed the terminology is because of the APA and the ACA faction that didn't want to label people and didn't want to hurt their little feelings. But I'm sorry, when you're an abuser and you're harming somebody and you're sadistic, you're a fucking psychopath, period. Done. If you're lying and you're convincing your target of abuse to lie, you're a psychopath. It's all the same thing. And people will argue with me on that. And it's like, no, people, it is because of the progression of each DSM-5. They've changed the terminology each time. At first it was psychopath, then it was antisocial, or no, psychopath, sociopath, and now it's antisocial. So it's political. It's all political correctness. So I'm sorry, tomato, tomato. Crazy is crazy, and psychopath is a psychopath is a psychopath. So yeah, it's psychopathic behavior. It is that crazy thinking that you're above the law and you can do whatever you want and you're going to get your way at any cost. And I do mean any cost. They don't care. They'll even blow up themselves sometimes if they think that they can take somebody else out with them. So, okay. All right. All right. Yeah, they enjoy getting angry. They live on it. That's meth to them. That is total meth to them. My mother gets that smug little smirk There you go. While often baiting me to react, and then claims she was just joking and it's my fault. I reacted to her words so emotionally. It's scary. And I see that facial expression in nightmares. Yes, absolutely. When somebody says they are just kidding or just joking and they say something hurtful, okay, it was intended. It was on purpose. Things said in jest that are hurtful are meant, period. Period. Because kind, normal, rational people don't treat each other like that. You don't treat family like that. You don't treat friends like that. You certainly don't treat lovers like that. You don't say harmful things to them and then go, just kidding. Okay? You don't. You don't treat your daughter like that. You don't treat your son like that. So, yes, and they will get that smirk on their face. It's kind of like that, ooh, I'm getting you to react. You know, they really enjoy it. They do. They abso-fucking-lutely do, and it's not okay. All right, so you are describing my ex to a T. He was diagnosed as antisocial personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder by a licensed psychologist. I'm pretty sure he is dark triad. So glad I got away. Me too. He is definitely becoming worse as he ages, and they do. They do, because their needs are not going to be able to get met because they're no longer young. They're no longer attractive. They're no longer able to manipulate in the way that they used to be able to. I mean, some of them are very charming. I mean, if you look at like the Ted Bundys of the world, the serial killers, terribly charming, and they can pull the wool over even experienced counselors' eyes. And they're dangerous. They're effing dangerous. So yeah. And that's why it's so important that if you are dealing with an abuser, you do not ever go to couples counseling with them. You go to individual for yourself, because oftentimes, like I said, therapists are not well-versed in personality disorders. They're not well-versed in antisocial personality disorder. And if it's a charming antisocial, they will be able to pull the wool over the counselor's eyes. They'll flirt with them. They'll do whatever. They'll make it sound so rational and so real and so blah, blah, blah. So yeah, be careful of who you're going to therapy with. Okay. Passive, parasitical, and aggressive. Yeah. All right. Narcissistic smirk. Yeah, absolutely. They do the narcissistic smirk. It's like they're saying something nasty to you and they're enjoying it. They're enjoying it. Normal people don't do that. You know when you've hurt somebody's feelings. You know it. And guess what? So psychopaths do too. They just enjoy it. Normal people don't. Normal people don't enjoy hurting other people. We really don't. Where would you say the difference lies between having fleas and being traits of personality disorder? Okay. If the target of abuse was an honorable person and had a conscience and did the right thing for years and knew right from wrong, but then got involved with an abuser and then started mirroring the abuser, that's picking up fleas. They're trying to mirror the abuser so that they stay safe, so that they don't get punished anymore by the abuser. When you pick up traits of, this is something you've had your entire life. Okay, this is something that's been going on since you were a teenager, maybe before, you know what I'm saying? And it's gone on throughout your life. That's traits up, okay? That's a learned behavior. The picking up fleas is when somebody who is honorable suddenly starts lying or cheating or stealing because that's what their partner is encouraging them to do. That's picking up fleas because that's not who they are. They become targets of abuse that start mirroring their abuser, become unrecognizable to family and friends. This once honorable person, this once man or woman of their word, you now cannot believe anything that comes out of their mouth. Why? Because the abuser has told them, everybody lies. You need to lie. You need to cheat. You need to steal. You need to this. You need to that. You need to put this person down. You need to not talk to them. You need to run everything through me before you answer your sibling. You need to do this before you talk to your parents. You need to do this before you talk to your best friend. You need to stop talking to your best friend. You need to da-da-da-da-da-da. That's the difference. Is that the target of abuse is desperately trying to avoid being punished, and they're desperately trying to hold on to an amazingly dysfunctional relationship, and they'll do anything to keep it. And that's because they're in the fog. Stockholm syndrome. They think that their existence depends upon this person because this person has now isolated them from everybody. So there that is. Okay. The psychopath totally did the smirk during the last Hoover attempt. They enjoyed it. Oh yeah. So narcissists, borderlines, and I'm talking the malignant end, and antisocial will do the Hoover. And they're not missing you, guys. I cannot say that enough. They're not wanting you back because they love you. They're not wanting you back because they miss you. They're wanting you back because whatever current supply has run out. And so they're looking in the past to see if they can pull one of their former narcissistic supplies back up so that they can get that lovely little cocaine hit. So yeah, that's totally psychopathic. You don't treat people like shit and then act like nothing ever happened. That's not normal. Let's say that again. You don't treat people like shit and then act like nothing ever happened. That is not normal. It is not. It is not. Absolutely not normal. Okay. So when you get to the malignant end of the spectrum, all of these issues start overlapping. And it's called the dark triad because you've got psychopathy, you've got, which is antisocial, you've got the narcissism, which is narcissism, and you've got the control freak, which is being a control freak. It's sliding into the malignancy. It's being the one who doesn't care who they hurt in order to get their way. They don't care what they need to do in order to be right. And they're dangerous. They're absolutely dangerous. And you want to have a good support group that you can go to if they try to hoover you back, if you've managed to get away from them, absolutely. If you are in the middle of a relationship with them, they will stop you from going to support group. They will stop you from going to therapy. They will keep you from educating yourself. They will convince you that they know better than everybody else, and they will try to stop you from having a relationship with your family, with your friends, even with your own children. So this is really super dangerous. If somebody has isolated you to that point, Houston, you are in deep shit and you need help. So get out and ask for help. And that is the hardest thing for people in an abusive relationship to do, because the abuser is going to try to sabotage it. They're going to try to keep you from getting the help, and our egos get in the way. Well, I shouldn't have to ask for help. I should. Well, you're shooting all over yourself. Stop it. Go ask for help. Get help. Get out. Seriously. Because this is not normal. This is not healthy. So anyway, there it is. Okay, I think I covered all of the differences between all of this. Does anybody have any last questions? Looking. I don't see any right now. Okay, so next week, what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to talk about gray rock and no contact and how to do it. Because it's really important that you have the tools to deal with when the abusers and or the flying monkeys come around and try to suck you back into the drama. And you need to be able to know how to go gray rock successfully and how to go no contact successfully. And especially, we're coming up on the holidays. We're going to have Thanksgiving this coming Thursday. So unfortunately, gray rock and no contact will be after that, but it'll get you prepared for Christmas and New Year's. So we've got that coming up. So yeah, you need to learn how to do those things and how to keep yourself safe, and that it's okay to say no, and it's okay to do your own tradition, and it's okay to not participate with a bunch of abusers or a bunch of flying monkeys. So anyway, there that is. Okay. Any last questions, guys? Because I'm gonna be calling it a day because my voice is starting to go. Okay, do you think that apples, hello. Do you think that applies to when in a parent-child context? If it looks like fleas, it's probably traits of in reality. If it has been forever, if this is consistent, if they've been like this forever and a day, it's traits of. If this is a new behavior after they've gotten with an abuser, then that's fleas, if that makes any sort of sense. So yeah. Okay, guys, I'm going to call it good. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Also, one last shameless plug for my book, You Can Lead a Horse to Water, but You Can't Make Him Do the Cha-Cha, all about why some people stay in abusive relationships and others get out and what the difference is. So this is a great book for family and friends that don't get it. This is a great book for family and friends that don't understand why we were all in an abusive relationship. It is a conglomeration of case studies that I've had. And it really does explain what the heck's going on. So I'm going to be recording the audio for this, not next week because it's Thanksgiving, but the week after Thanksgiving, I'm going to be doing the audio recording on that. And hopefully I'll get that up on Amazon here pretty soon, so you'll have it on audio. Also, my old book, What's Wrong with Your Dad, is still available on print on demand. Cannot think of anything else. If you guys have any questions about anything I talked about, I got everything today out of the DSM-5, the Diagnostic Manual and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So Anyway, you can look that up, or you can go to Mayo Clinic and look up the definitions as well. All right, guys, have a wonderful, wonderful week. Can't think of anything else. And get your questions ready on Gray Rock and no contact, flying monkeys, etc. That's what we're going to talk about. Have a great week, guys. Love you all. Be good to each other, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.